Wasseypur is a small suburb of Dhanbad, and years ago it used to be a small little village of its own. And as the city expanded, it became part of Dhanbad. I came upon this story because of the co-writer, Zishan Kadri, and his two partners. They approached me while I produced a play which was written by my wife, and she was performing it. And I was just standing outside doing nothing, playing the role of a producer while the play was on. So these boys came and pitched me this story. I had all the time. And what I found very interesting was this place that nobody knows about, I did not know about it, has had this gang war going on for years for just who controls Wasseypur. And Wasseypur, if you see it, actually is 2 streets. And 6 decades of war over that. I found it very amusing. I found it very funny in the sense that, ironical, that generations have died trying to do this. Over what? And the root cause was nothing but just a little ego tussle. And plus there was this bigger war between Wasseypur and the Singh family. It also somewhere for me becomes a parallel to how our country has changed over the years since the British left. People did not know that natural resources were the root cause of all strife. In India it was coal then, but if you go anywhere, you go to Ivory Coast, you go to everywhere, it's always natural resources has been the cause of the strife and the power struggle and politics and invasions, everything.
क्या हुआ? काम क्यों नहीं हो रहा यहाँ?
हमारे साथ बहुत अन्याय हुआ है साहब। हमारा घर जला दिया गया है। हम बच्चे वाले हैं साहब।
हम अंदर मूतने जा रहे हैं। मूत के बाहर आए तो यहाँ कोई दिखाई नहीं देना चाहिए।
It is a very political film. It is a very political film for people who see it clearly. And that became talked about because there was a lot of accusations on the film when it came out in India. There's a big magazine that called it India's most right-wing film because they said that the film is kind of showing Muslims and the way they are doing, and labor class is shown as criminals. At the same time, the other critic wrote about it's India's most left-wing film because it shows Muslims as heroes and Hindus as villains. So those political interpretations went on. The whole film is shot in the places I grew up in. I've grown up with that. If you see the whole of North India, women are the silent backbone of the house. It's always the man who acts like he's in charge. And the woman would let him act like that. It's always the woman who's in charge. Because I've grown up. See sequences in part 1 where the mother beats up the child. I've always seen my mother like that. Always working. And anything I do wrong, she would beat me up like that. Because that sequence is shot at the house I grew up in. That house is my house where I grew up in. And my mother would beat me up like that in the backyard. It's the women I know, it's the women I've seen. If you see my extended family, even if you go on Facebook and you'll see pictures, you'll know it's the women who control everything. In our lives also, it's always been the women who control everything. The sight of blood makes me faint, actual blood. And I've always believed that violence, the more raw, real and brutal it is, it actually puts people off violence. When the violence is aspirational, when you see movies like if you see a Luc Besson movie, and you see action, you want to do it. You feel like wanting to get up and jump over a rooftop and you want to jump into you see a taxi, you want to do those stunts. That's aspirational violence. That violence is more palatable. People don't think it's violent, but it actually generates violence many times. But when violence is real, it actually puts you off violence. And I wanted to do violence like that, but also there were so many restrictions in my own country that I can't really do it. So I have tried to push a boundary in a very relative way, from how we depict violence on screen in India to where can I push it to. But compared to how people approach violence the world over, it still falls little short. But wherever it is strong, it is simply because of the element of realism in it. If you see the actual point of impact and violence, I keep it off screen. Even the beheading scene is done in a man's lap. You don't really see anything. You imagine it. So I've left it a lot to people's imagination and why it bothers them. Why it also bothers you, because you know exactly what's going on and you're not seeing it. So you are imagining the horror of it. For Wasseypur, we really did not refer to any film, because the stories as it is, including, man being shot at the petrol pump, is how the person was shot at the petrol pump. So all those things were not bad. There was obvious comparisons to Godfather because of 3 generations stories and things, but that's happened. For the action sequences, the film that we referred to was Children of Men. Because simple reason being, the way they shot action, single long takes, I wanted the violence to be real. And in order for it to be real, I did not want to use the editing technique that, there's an attack and there's impact and then attack and you cut it and shoot separately and put it together. I wanted it all to happen in one frame. So the only film we saw was Children of Men for action sequences. There's this big single take in a film called Secret of the Eyes, which won the Oscar, the Spanish-Argentinian movie. We referred to that for that one long single take, how did it. And taking cue from there, we shot the sequence in part 2 where he jumps from the roof. Because in Secret of the Eyes, there's this man who jumps from the 2 floors down and all that. So we refer to that in how they did it in the sense. But if you see the story, in the actual story, the man saved himself by jumping from the roof and broke his leg. So to recreate it, we were referring to films, how do we recreate it? But the idea to create violence in single scenes was simply because I wanted the violence to be impactful and not just exhilarating. For me, it was most commercial because of the action, because of the humor, because of the music and all that. I never thought that this film will go to a festival. In fact, to the extent that we did not show it to the festivals initially. I was in Berlin and I was still putting together my movie, and some people from the festival, Berlin festival, had liked the movie, but I could not send them a complete version because I could not finish it. But I was still carrying my movie because we were in Berlin doing some kind of a workshop. So I had a copy of my movie because I wanted to show it to some sales agents, friends of mine, to get their feedback on it. And Edward Weintraub from Director's Fortnight said, I've heard you've made a 6-hour movie. I said, yeah, but it's a very commercial movie. He said, still, can I see it? So I gave him the DVD. I never expected a call back from him. 1 month later, after I'm back in India, I get a call. I said, I love the film. I want it for the festival. And my film was not ready. And I'm saying, you must be joking, because it's a very commercial film. And then everything happened. We tried to finish the film for the festival. With the part 2 was still slightly incomplete. But we took it to the festival. And when on the day of the screening, I believed that the moment the film will be screened, I'll be exposed. Because I don't know what is this film doing in the festival. It's a very commercial film. So when part 1 started screening, I went out and I got drunk. I said, I have to now go back and face an empty theatre. They would have walked out and they would have said, what is this they're showing? And it was something else. It completely turned around everything. People were there and there was such a standing ovation and everybody loved it. Reviews were great. So it didn't sink in for a long time. It's a $4 million film. The film was made in four, but for me it was big budget because I've never made a film for more than $1 million. So 2-part film cost $4 million, which was very big for me. And for us, it was the riskiest film, the most unreasonable film on paper, because going by the Bollywood standard, it was a film in a dialect, not the original language. It was a film that had no stars in it, not a single known actors, mostly theatre actors or actors whose careers were over. It was 2 parts. It was 5 hours 40 minutes long. And everything that was a big no was in that film. It was a very unreasonable film. Until the Cannes screening, everybody was very scared. I had made my film, I was scared. My studio was scared, everybody was scared. But the excitement at Cannes changed the fate of the film. The studio became confident. The confidence showed in the way they released the film. Box office success of the film. It just changed because of what happened in that day in Director's Fortnight. And for me, it has changed everything because it has given me a lot of freedom. I don't have to fight for the budget. I'm making a film for the first time where I really did not have to share my script with the studios funding me. And I'm doing it exactly the way I've always wanted to make a film, in a very organic way, where I shoot everything, improvise with the actors, put it together when it comes together. And I'm doing that right now. So it has really changed everything. It has got us funding for all the smaller edgy films we were doing and raising money on Facebook and Twitter. Now we are being given money to make those kind of films. So Wasseypur has actually changed everything for us back home in India.